you're still just a product. But if we want to really connect and have that long-term brand loyalty and differentiate ourselves versus other recovery products and other tart cherry juice brands, like that's where, right, that keeps, you meet us out in the world, you try our products, you see how it fits into your life. That then starts to have this really meaningful impact that gives us that ability to scale. And for you to also want to talk about Cheribundi or wear our merch or do these other things that, help us grow versus just being another product.
Welcome to Long Run Labs, a weekly podcast from the team behind For the Long Run, telling the stories of those running the outdoor industry where endurance and entrepreneurship meet. This episode is brought to you by Superfiliate, the affiliate platform that actually makes partnership marketing simple. I've worked with just about every affiliate platform out there, and honestly, most of them are overcomplicated, overpriced, and a headache to use on both sides. Superfiliate flips that script. Setup takes minutes, tracking is seamless, and payouts are crystal clear. It's the one platform I trust because it just works. If you're a brand looking to scale partnerships, Superfiliate makes it easy to get affiliates genuinely excited to promote your products. With co-branded landing pages, rewards in cash or credit, and tools built to inspire action, it's the platform that finally delivers. Skip the hassle and go to superfiliate.com. Mention this podcast and your first month is free. All right, we are live with Ross Rutherford from Boulder, Colorado. Ross, welcome back.
Hey, it's good to be back.
This is the Long Run Labs podcast. I thought we were going to end up recording on For the Long Run, but we had an even better platform to record on now where we can talk shop and talk brand building and community and a lot about your journey as a runner as well.
Yeah, that's worked out nicely. There's been like a great evolution. I get to come out here a lot, so I'm glad we were able to do this live versus recording, on Zoom. So this was a good setup.
It's much better to have the in-person conversation versus we've seen each other a bunch in person, but there's something about sitting down for a recording in person that's just, it's such a better energy.
Yep.
So first question is a tough one. I hope you prepared. Who is Ross?
It's funny because I went back and I'm listening to how you start a lot of these with For the Long Run and Long Run Labs, right? And it's a complex question for sure, right? I think at the core, from a business perspective, I consider myself a brand builder, a sales and marketing leader, and I thrive in the emerging brands segment. And then personally, a bit of an adventure seeker, not to be confused with an adrenaline junkie. I'm not trying to go fast. I just like to go long, see some beautiful places, and go and experience new things. And then trying to just build a very purposeful, intentional life. I've been married for 6 years. My wife and I have a great relationship. She's Bosnian, and we have a big old Great Dane, just a big old cuddle nap machine. So trying to kind of build the best life I can with a lot of intention. And the last couple of years, it's been really nice as a lot of my personal passions have really then come together with my work passions as we've been building up Cheribundi in the run community and bringing the brand to more runners. So it's been a really cool intersection.
Let's rewind back to Ross becoming a runner. When did running enter your life?
For me, it was a little later, probably late 20s. So I was a college baseball player. I also played golf in college. Running typically at that point was more of either conditioning or punishment.
Played hockey and baseball, so familiar with the punishment modality of running. Yeah,
and so I was always slow. I was a catcher, barely ever stole a base unless it got past, went to the backstop. But I was always a decent long distance runner, like with the 5Ks when the teams would go, like when we would go run together. I was always kind of in the lead pack. And then so after college, stopped working out as much, still ate like crap. And then so at some point, mid-20s, was like, hey, let's rein this in. And so I started to run a little bit more, really getting back into exercising. And then at that point, running started to become something that I started to enjoy. And then I did my first Ragnar race, probably around age 25, 26, the Bourbon Chase in Kentucky. So it became this great way for me and college friends. I went to Georgetown College in Kentucky to get together once a year and do this race together. And I remember that first one was just this wild, daunting idea of a 200-mile relay race. I'd done like a 5K up to this point. So And then something came alive in me that first race. We did this thing together, right? You run all night. That race is kind of an iconic part of now the Ragnar series, where you go from the different bourbon distilleries through Kentucky. It's this beautiful race through rolling hills and horse farms. And it was this first time, like as a, then an adult, where there was this competitive nature again, and this like, hey, we can do some hard things. And so that then really started to grow. And then when I moved to Connecticut 10 years ago, it became a way for me to see the Northeast. So I joined the local running community, started running with them, and then got asked to be on one of their Ragnar teams. So every year we started to do these things. And that then just kind of started something. And then from there, started to build up. Had my first couple half marathons, and then have just continued to stretch that distance ever since. And now I'm dabbling in the dark arts of the ultra world. And so it's been pretty cool. It's been this really neat journey. And then especially the last 3 years as we've, with Cheribundi, built into the running community. And I've met so many more people doing pretty incredible things. And then I started to have this thought like, all right, well, why not me? Why can't I can, let's go try this stuff. Worst case scenario, like, maybe we don't finish one. Who cares? But like along the way, some really cool stuff happened. I fell in love with this journey, and running not only became a great part of like physical activity for me, but then this like mental clarity, the endorphins, right? Like that's always one of those things that like I tell myself those days that you don't feel like running, never regretted a run. I've regretted not doing a run, but never regretted a run, and always feel better and always feel more clear-headed afterwards. And so, there's a lot of days if I if I find myself stuck on a problem or frustrated with a problem, or if I want to send a snarky email, like let's go catch a few miles, and then let's come back and see how we feel afterwards, see how some of that has kind of gone, and go from there. So.
And you do a fantastic job sharing it on Instagram as well. You're one of my favorite people to follow on there because everything you do is fucking fun. Like everything you do, at least the sharing it on Instagram part, is like so full of joy, whether it's a donut run or going between the juice companies in Connecticut, or like, what is it about, like, you're a fun person, right? Like we've done events
thanks. I tried to be,
So like it's probably not like super intentional around like making sure everything is fun, but how does it work out that you're able to put that fun spin on everything? And it's clear that dovetails into how you approach work as well in a great way. Yeah,
thank you. So like I've always been pretty positive. I have a pretty positive outlook. And so I would say that's kind of one of my superpowers. I'm pretty good at honing the positive aspects of things. And I try to find a lot of joy in running. Like I'm not that fast, right? So like I don't take it that seriously. And so it's like, how can I have fun with this? How can I have adventures? And so that's been one thing I've really tried the last couple of years of this journey. And then especially with like ultra marathon training, it's tough, right? Like you're sore a lot. You're like, it's constant building and scaling. And so, right, like how do I make this fun? And that's kind of where this donut run thing came from early in the year. And I remember watching last year, Alex Hermanson, so in Herm's Arms, he would there for a little bit. He had this segment where he would like go eat for lunch. He'd have like a burrito on the run and some other things. Like, well, like I got to figure out how to eat real food during ultras. And then and I love donuts. And so I just started kind of incorporating on my Saturday long runs, different donut stops along the way that also like kept the courses fresh and where we were going kind of new and different. And so it became this really fun thing. And so like last weekend I went up to just outside of Hartford, Connecticut with Manchester Running Company, and about 30 people come up, let's do a donut run. And so we all ran together, and it was just this really fun environment. And I think that like as I, for my 400 followers on Instagram.
I think it's a few more than that.
Yeah, and so it's then really fun to just like, document my journey along the way. And I get a kick too out of going back and looking at these things and kind of this where we've started, where we've gotten. Like, it's for me, that has been this really fun piece that's come together, because I didn't ever dream of becoming an ultra runner or a distance runner. And
but you did rim to rim in May, right?
In the last year, I've done 4 ultras, 2 marathons, a couple HYROX competitions. And so it's like, rim to rim was 3 weeks after the Desert Rats 100K. And so it was right. And they were just these really cool lessons of the buildup, but then being able to just keep going one step further and focusing on the task at hand. And I think that some of that has been this really cool, powerful journey. And then like what happens when you get in the pain cave? What happens when it feels like I've run out of answers during these and I don't want to continue? what do I have left in the toolbox, right? And so, sometimes it's going back to the basics, and all right, we're just going to get to the next tree, get to the next spot, like, right? And then you get there and like, okay, let's go a little bit further. We can do anything for 2.5 or 3 hours. And then sometimes you stack a whole bunch of those 2.5 or 3 hours, and then eventually you get there. And so like it's been this neat journey. And I've tried to kind of like document it a little bit for myself as I've been building, but then at the same time, it is always fun to like, if we can inspire some people along the way to try out something hard and go do something hard and push some new limits, I think that makes all of us a little bit better.
How does that interact with your work experience? So specifically the like ability to do hard things and stack brick after brick after brick. Have you thought about the analogy of business and the endurance world?
Yeah, it's funny. I think about that a lot during these Saturday long runs, right? Especially like when I'm solo dolo out there. But for us, it was very brick by brick, because when we the running initiative started for Cheribundi in 2022.
What is
Cheribundi?
Yeah,
so Cheribundi. So tart cherry juice, which is great for recovery. So the most antioxidant-rich superfruit. And then the other cool thing about tart cherries is they also have a naturally occurring melatonin, so they help regulate your sleep cycle. So absolutely fantastic for recovery. We work with every NFL team. I think we have every Major League Baseball team except for one. We might have just closed that one solo one that we were missing. Most of the NBA. And then a lot of like the Power 5 conference. So there's now over 2,000 teams that use Cheribundi every day after practice and after games. And so you have this proof point from the best athletes in the country using the product every day after practice and after games. And so, early on, it was kind of, some of that was hard to fathom because we also don't
promote it.
But yeah, like we're still a small brand. We don't have LeBron money yet. Hopefully one day we will, but like, right, it's awesome when you see him using the product after games. We also know that the Lakers do. And so when we started, our CMO at the time had just gone on vacation, and he read Phil Knight's Shoe Dog book. And so he comes back and he's got all this energy, right? And the grit and the grind in Shoe Dog and how they built that. And at the time I was the VP of sales on our startup chocolate brand called Nibmore. Cheribundi was also part of that little holding company that we had. And so I had like more of an advisory role in Cheribundi. And they're like, hey, we really want to do more in the running community. You're the only runner on the team. I think that you really like at the time, he's like, you really remind me of Jeff Johnson for Nike, and how he would go around and build some community. Maybe we can do that with some run clubs. And he had just, and Rob had just read the LA Times article on Koreatown Run Club, which is just cool and swaggy and right, has all this cachet. And so it started this idea of let's work with some run clubs. And I ran in my local club in Connecticut and was doing some races, was doing some Ragnars. And so it's like, sure, and I just come off of a training block where I used Cheribundi for that marathon. It was my second marathon, and the training just went so much better. I was less sore. I went through there without injuries. It was just more of an enjoyable training block. I think that I also had gained some respect for the marathon after the first one, when I didn't fuel properly and immediately ended up in the medical tent and cramps all over. And so we started that. But then when that started, it was easier for me to get a hold of Tin Man Elite and Bowerman and Union Athletics than it was for me to get a hold of the track club here in Boulder, or Brooklyn Track Club in New York, or Central Park, or any of these clubs, because your everyday up and down the street runner and your everyday consumer didn't really know who Cheribundi was. But the elite athletes had all ran with it in college, and so they all knew. And so that was like this wild thing where it's like, how can I cold call and get a hold of Union Athletics and Tin Man, but I'm having a hard time getting like run
Brian
clubs in
Stroy.
Austin, yeah, or anybody like to get back to me. And so it's like, you know what?
Brian Stroy didn't respond to your email?
I got nothing out of the gates. It was
Brian.
wild. And so it was like, you know what? If you can't get a hold of him, hop on a plane and go run with him. I was like, you're messing with me. And so as I traveled around for different meetings, I would look up, who's the run clubs in the city, and I would show up and I would run with them. And so, and then we signed.
It's hard to ignore someone who's in front of your face.
Yeah, that's right. So I had to show up with a backpack cooler and like, hey, here's some Cheribundi, like, let's run together. And at the same time, like as a runner, I think that, there was this authenticity about it. And so then we started working with Good Vibes Track Club in LA and Brooklyn Track Club in New York as just a test. Like, hey, let's sponsor these clubs. We'll work with them. We'll give them some Cheribundi, and like, we'll get their feedback. Really, part of that was a feedback, right? Things like I knew as a runner that like I felt better. We had all these athletes using it all the time. And like, then as adults, the running boom was happening, but like a 12 to 16 week marathon or half marathon training block really beats up your body. So recovery for runners has really entered the conversation. Tart cherry juice had been kind of, in and around some of the media around that. Runner's World had done some different pieces on it. And so we started working with these clubs and sending Cheribundi out, letting them sample it. And I'd go out and run with them. And I'd never done track practices before. And so
Jess starts kicking your ass.
Yeah. So I'm showing up to practice, just trying to hang on.
Yeah.
And not be like, look, the Cheribundi rep can't hang.
Right. Yeah.
So, I remember distinctly,
it's
like,
a powerful motivator.
Yeah.
Like, not look like a fool.
Yeah. Right. So it's like there's hundreds of people at these runs at 7 a.m. in Brooklyn or 7 p.m. on a Tuesday night in LA. And I just remember that a couple months in, I was at a practice and I've got my hands on my knees. We've got one more 800 left. I'm hanging on by a thread. And I hear somebody say, just one more 800 and then we get the cherry juice. And I was like, oh shit. And nobody knew who I was there yet.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was like, okay, you guys are into this. Like, this is what I was hoping for. Yeah. Amazing. Right. So then I start talking to some, different people and then it was like this build started to happen. That was really cool. Where we started then, we worked with Hood to Coast the first year. And initially I'd planned to we were going to have a corporate team do Hood to Coast. I messed up the application. I got excited. I talked everybody into it during a happy hour. And the next day I sent the application in so that nobody could back out. But with Hood to Coast, you have to send the application on a specific day. And I sent it in about a month early, so we didn't get in. And I was like, oh shit, like we were all going to do this as a corporate event. And so I just bought the full season of races. I was like, maybe we'll take some of our run club partners with Good Vibes Track Club in Brooklyn. I'll take a race team out there. We'll film it. We'll have some fun. Be a great way to build some community and get to know these clubs a little bit better. And so that's then what we started doing. And while we were out there, we're like, hey, maybe we should give Cheribundi to everybody out here. And that kind of started our race sponsorship piece that grew from 3 races in 2022 to 45 races last year and really built up. And then it was just kind of along the way meeting these amazing people that like you'd hear their stories and what they were able to accomplish. And then they seemed normal enough. Like I remember the first call I had with Jess Woods, who is one of the biggest badasses I've ever met, but I'm on this call with her and Steve Finley and she's like, I was the first woman to complete the Speed Project solo. And I'm like, I don't know what the Speed Project is. So I'm like Googling it.
And your jaw
330
drops,
miles. Like, who the fuck is this woman? So I was very intimidated. Then the first couple of times, I was around her and some of the other squad, because like they all had these running resumes that were so impressive. And I'm like, hey, I've done some Ragnars. I run a very mediocre 8-minute mile, but I've got a lot of energy and a lot of heart. Let's have some fun.
But what's so cool about the running space is that nobody gives a shit about in the best way, like what the actual time is. It's more about how you approach it, right? I have a bunch of friends who are gold, or not a lot, who are gold medal Olympians. One who's a gold medal Olympian and others who are Olympic medalists. And I will never do what they do, but I can be dedicated in my own way, and they can see that.
Yeah.
And they can see how I approach the sport that's maybe not the same as how they do it, but directionally similar to how they do it. And that's the piece that resonates. And it's, if you take yourself seriously, in some ways, and if you apply yourself, you can be relatable to people who are top dogs and the best in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's how you build a relationship with an athlete, an ambassador, whatever. My whole career has been built around partnerships and community and whatnot, from back when I was growing a brand out of college in 2012 when we were selling spirulina and chlorella algae. And I went to Sochi because we had so many Olympians using the product. And I wasn't doing curling, I wasn't doing skeleton or bobsled or whatever, but I could relate, they could relate in the focus of how to train for something that you want to take seriously and get better at. And there are a lot of people who are quite phony and like really want to not fake it till you make it, but just fake it and take advantage of people. And then there are people who are like truly wanting to embed themselves in the community. Like I ran my first marathon because our customers were using our product for marathons and asking me questions about it, and I didn't know how to answer the question. So I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna run a marathon. I like also had a few beers and told my friend Jim that I was like, yep, I'm gonna run a marathon this year. And I think that when you're so all in or so bought into something, people can feel that and people want to be a part of that. And so your energy is infectious, and your partnership with Jess, with Brooklyn Trap Club, with Koreatown Run Club, like people, and I'm wondering how much of this you've thought through or you've reflected on. Like the vibe that you give off is not like, hey, Ross wants to come in and like do a business thing and collect a bunch of partners, but no, Ross wants to be a part of this thing. He's got this thing that helps the thing be better. And what, like, have you reflected on the way you've embedded yourself into the community?
And that's how early on I wanted to show up. Like, let's show up and be a part of this. Like, let's celebrate the journey with the clubs.
Right.
Let's get to know the clubs. Like, let's help them prepare for the races that they're training for. Let's train with them and let's celebrate the journey along the way. And I think that really helped set us apart as we were building into this, but also made it like really fun and really personal. And so really developed these great relationships as we travel around and we go to races together and we cheer each other on throughout the course of the year. And that's built up and made it really fun and special as we've been trying to do this. And so that, I think, and I don't know, right, it's one of those things you can't really fake.
Right.
And I also think that what I love about the running community is just the authenticity of it, right? I think that as runners too, we talk to each other about like, right, the runs that we're doing, the products that we're using, the shoes we're in, the gels and the fuels that we're using, what electrolytes are we having, right? How do we make this really hard sport a little bit easier so that we continue to do it every day and build, and right? And if you want to train hard and chase great things, great. If you want to just like do it and be part of like the really welcoming, supportive community that it is, then like come on out and have some fun and, and try and be a part of it. And I think that has been awesome. And then you see, and I think one of the cool things that has helped then springboard my own journey too is like, right, you're at races and you see these people that generally you're like, I wouldn't have taken you maybe as a runner, and you're out here busting your ass and you're trying things. And like, there's so much inspiration to be had at any race if you're just looking around and watching people and watching these smiles on their faces and the way they approach it when it's like, fuck, how did you do this? Like, right? Like some of these cards you've been dealt, like, right? Like, I always think that the Achilles athletes is one of the most fascinating things to me. It's just like to approach this and then, right, take on these challenges. Like if you can take on these challenges, then like, I don't have excuses to like not give it a try, and then find something, great out, along the way about myself and my own journey, my own grit. And then how I bring that back to building a brand, scaling Cheribundi. We merged a couple of years ago with GoodBelly, what it means when those two teams come together and how we grow as a team. I think all of that has been like these really cool parallels between the two that for me have grown and risen at the same time, which has been pretty awesome.
So I wanted to frame it in that way because it's around the authenticity piece. And I've had a lot of conversations on this podcast and also offline about how much money is coming into running right now. And there are brands and people that say, excuse female, excuse millennial, excuse well-educated and high household income compared to the average American. Like that's the ideal buying persona for most things, right? So of course it makes sense to want to advertise, want to market, want to partner with these organizations or companies or groups or people or athletes. And so I think we have a responsibility in protecting I don't want to say integrity, but authenticity of it. There are a couple of ways to come in and partner with properties or assets in a space, right? You can come from a performance marketing side of things and look at meta spend and look at sponsorships and look at, return on ad spend. You can look at brand marketing. Cheribundi seems to have taken a brand marketing focus with some performance marketing. We've had a marketing partnership with For the Long Run in years past. And it's just interesting when a brand leads with brand marketing because you can be more creative, you can be more fun, you can tell stories. Let's start by having you define, how do you think about brand marketing? And we'll go from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, right, and you're always going to have this push-pull with both, right? I mean, I think that the way that we've approached the running community has really been around brand and building community, right? Trying to go into a community that, like, recovery is important. Cheribundi helps solve one of those problems and is a great solution for that. And so, right, I mean, at the core, it was like, hey, how do we, like, get this solution in front of people? But also, like, not be like salesy or pushy or right, like just some like product placement. Like, hey, we're runners. We found a lot of value in this. We work with a lot of athletes that use the product all the time. This could be really beneficial to you, especially as you find yourself in those deep, dark holes of marathon and half marathon training when everything hurts and you got to do it again tomorrow. And so there was that piece of it too. And I think that building community, building this loyalty, and especially for emerging brands, having that meaning, that authenticity behind the brand that as a consumer, you want to latch on to. Hey, I like to be a part of the Cheribundi brand. I like what they represent, and I think that is really important. Right. And then you also then have like the performance side, which always from a financial perspective it's right. You can prove that out. I have a 3 ROAS. I spent this much on Meta. You see the results immediately, right? Because you can track all that. Whereas this is harder to track, and it leads to a lot of questions. Is this the right investment? Should we be investing so much over here? Should we move more of this into performance spend? But I think at the same time, right, you need both, and they need to complement each other. And we've just known that our everyday athlete and the everyday healthlete is very active, and the running community is one of those that there's 18,000 races that happen in the United States a year. Run clubs are popping up all over the place. The communities are super welcoming and friendly. If you just show up and try to match that energy, right? Which isn't always easy. It's hard when you walk into, a group of 50 strangers,
right,
and you're about to get your ass kicked in a track workout, and you're like, oh, all right, well, let's get it, right? You talk to some people along the way. And so those pieces have kind of come together of we've looked at lots of different communities, throughout the course of the time, because really anybody can use Cheribundi. It's great for gout. It's got all these solutions, and even I think we look at our grocery consumer that tends to be a little bit different. And that, a lot of people don't think to go down the juice aisle for their sports performance recovery.
Unless you're on that high carb game.
Yeah.
In which case, juice is great.
Yeah. And so for us, we have a big D2C business. Amazon's been growing, but then our run stores have really grown throughout the course of showing up authentically with the run clubs. The feed was one of those really cool early proof points where it was on this target list for hey, let's get into the feed. And we weren't on their radar. And then we showed up to Hood to Coast big one year, and they had a team out there, and they were one of the sponsors as well. And we ran into their team out there and hey, let's talk on Monday. So on Monday, after months of figuring out how do we get into the feed and felt all right, we're a little stuck. They were also at that point scaling and growing really fast. How do we bring more brands in? And then on Monday, that started this partnership that is just our sales have doubled there every single year the last couple of years, and it's been super fun. So I think that that brand question is big, right? It's who's your core consumer? What do they need? How do we help solve that need? And then how do we show up and meet them where they're at? And so for us, it really started with a small run club test that turned out to be a very big success, and then showing up to races, because we're all trying to figure out how do we continue to do what we love for longer. And the running community is very, right. We talk a lot. We're always looking for what can help this whole process go a little smoother, go a little better. And then we tell our friends about it. And so, right, I think that for us, let's show up and be a part of it. Let's be, we have a team of runners. I've added more runners to the team, and let's tell the story about how we use this with ourselves, and hopefully we can kind of help some people along the way, and then share some other cool stories.
So tangibly, going back to the first part of that question, how do you convince executives or the board that investing in events, investing in community is going to be worth it when it's harder to demonstrate? We spent $1 here, we got $3 back. If you put $1 into a sponsorship, code usage shows $3 back. Great, success. Keep pouring gasoline on the fire. On the brand marketing side, it's a little bit harder to quantify that. And I think a lot of the reason I'm asking this question is because I think so many brands forget about the fact that you need the brand marketing to support the performance marketing. The performance marketing will not work, or will eventually, the well will go dry if you don't provide the air cover of brand marketing. How do you convince those above you that that's necessary?
Yeah, I mean, and it's an ongoing conversation. And that was a big thing early on, because the first year we did it unbudgeted. And so then the 20,000 samples we sent to Hood to Coast started a larger conversation. And I was like, oh yeah, no, we didn't really budget for that. But here's what came out of it, right? And so And one of the things that we were really looking at is if you look at the brands that like have disrupted and done big things that have scaled, they all show up in the world, right? So I think there was some of that early, like Kind Bar was handing out Kind Bars everywhere. Red Bull's everywhere. Red Bull's also massive, but they still show up and they do things. Cliff Bar was doing the same thing. And then if I look at like other brands, I mean, I was introduced to Liquid Death at Lollapalooza and at concerts. And it's like, what is this? Is that water in a can? And it's like
the beer.
Yeah. And so, right. So they're showing up. And so like, right. They found their community. They showed up there. And so like, there's this piece of, it's very hard to prove, right? Like we've just handed out all these samples. We've gotten some emails. We've given out some promo codes. People don't, there was like, it can't always tie out, right? Like I might get, 50 promo code usages out of a Hood to Coast race where we use 20,000 samples. But at the same time, our D2C sales were going up. Our Amazon sales were going up. We were picking up new run store distribution. Our sales on the feed are growing. So we had this evidence it's been kind of directionally, you can do it, but it's been kind of hard to tie. Now, the nice thing then too about with D2C sales and Amazon and our own website is I can track like, right, where we ship the stuff to. What zip codes is the product going to? Have I been active in this area? New York was recently something I was digging into. It's like, hey, we're doing stuff in New York all the time. How is this city compared to Nashville or Dallas or Portland or LA? Like we do some stuff, but not as much stuff. And our sales there have been exponentially growing. And then also like over the course of the last couple of years, we've, gained thousands and thousands of emails, tens of thousands of emails through different events and partnerships. And those emails and the purchases that have come out of those emails are 55% more valuable. The sales from the running community in these events are 55% higher than the other emails. So like, right, we know that like this group of consumers spends more, they're looking for recovery more, their purchase cycle extends further. But it's taken a while for that data to build and show up and these trends to kind of show up. There's a little bit of a lag. Whereas like in performance, you're right. Like I was looking at my ROAS on Amazon for sales last week, right? And I can track it daily. And so I can always kind of come back to that and I can adjust it here and there. Whereas like, right, the events and stuff, but that's where that long-term brand value, the long-term growth comes in, right? We can get those quick hits with the performance, but then you're still just a product. But if we want to really connect and have that long-term brand loyalty and differentiate ourselves versus other recovery products and other tart cherry juice brands, like that's where, right, that keeps, you meet us out in the world, you try our products, you see how it fits into your life. That then starts to have this really meaningful impact that gives us that ability to scale. And for you to also want to talk about Cheribundi or wear our merch or do these other things that, help us grow versus just being another product, because there's a million great products out there, right? And like there's other tart cherry juice brands, there's lots of different things, but we've tried to position ourselves in this athletic arena.
Hi friends, are you enjoying this episode? That's great. Would you do us a favor? Would you head on over to Apple and leave us a 5-star rating and review? This is a new show and we can't wait to continue to grow this new platform. Your reviews help more people find this podcast. Thank you in advance. This episode is sponsored by Eternal. Eternal is a science-backed preventative health company built for anyone who takes their health and training seriously and wants to live up to their peak. Located in San Francisco and New York City, Eternal provides comprehensive, integrated primary care services in addition to advanced testing and personalized health planning. They go beyond your biomarkers and data to provide real answers to any of your health concerns. From proactive care, acute care, and expedited referrals to performance testing, physical therapy, and personal training. They're healthcare providers that care about you and the lifestyle you strive to live. Whether you're trying to hit a PR, avoid injury, or simply want a better handle on your health, Eternal gives you the full picture and a plan of action. It's the kind of primary care I've always dreamed was possible. Thanks again to Eternal for supporting personalized, evidence-based care for athletes like us. You said something there that reminds me of something I hear often on Shark Tank. You're still just a product right? Cheribundi is a brand that sells products, and brands that aspire to be brands versus just CPG commodities, where like I get more excited that you bring me this thing of Cheribundi than if you brought me a jar of whole 365 tart cherry juice. Mm-hmm. It's essentially the same thing, except for what it means behind the fact that it's this versus that. And it's like, oh, when I consume this, I'm part of something, and I feel something associated with the experience in consuming the product or using the product or wearing the product or whatever. And that's the holy grail, right? That's
Yeah.
what, as a marketer, everybody's going for, to feel something. I had a great chat with a fellow Ross
Yeah,
McKay.
that conversation with Ross McKay was awesome.
That's the epitome of, like, he's like, we're not a hydration company. We're not a salt company. We're a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he's building this brand, or you're building this brand, so that you feel like you're a part of something, and being a part of the brand enables you to consume the product. But
Yeah, what they've done at Cadence has been so fun to watch, and how he's entered the scene with that brand. And then being in the New York area, like I've seen them start to show up and how they've scaled and the energy around it, and that is awesome. Like that is right. Like it's fun to be a part of. I've worked on lots of different brands throughout the course of my career. Most of my career has been in chocolate.
it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it was. It was. I worked for Celestial Seasonings Tea here in Boulder, and Hain Celestial for a while. And so and I mean, great brands, things that I love. And there is this part of but there have also been along the course of this career where I just sold products, and then it's just empty, click clacky on the computer,
Yeah.
and it's kind of going through the motions, and it's fine, and it pays the bills, and but there's something
I could never do that.
I love about working on a brand and a product that you love and you're connected to, and that you feel like serves a real purpose and makes things better. And I remember I had this one CPG job for a little over a year, and it was one of my first stints in the private equity game. And I was like, okay, let's get this thing, we'll build it, we'll sell it. It was a very profitable business, but I just hated what we were selling. I've found myself sitting in the parking lot a little bit longer every morning. I loved the job and the work, but the brand sucked. And I was like, this is killing me. I don't feel like I'm putting a good product out into the market. It's like, if this product went away, it'd be better for humanity. It was like, this is everything that's wrong with the American food system. And I just I can't do this. And so I left there, and I went on to my next venture with Hain Celestial, where I was like, I love all the brands that are in here. And so there was something special about the connection to it. And I think that what we've been trying to do here at Next Foods and with Cheribundi and GoodBelly has been really fun. And I think that brand side of, on Cheribundi, where, how do we connect with where you're at and help you do what you love, and kind of have a cool swaggy brand behind it. It's got some cachet. Is for me, it's been a really fun, powerful 5 years, especially the last 3, as we've merged the running portion of this. So then my love for running and brand building has really collided. And then I'm like, all right, well, if we're gonna do a half marathon, let's do a marathon. Well, if we're gonna do a marathon, let's do an ultra. And and then I saw the UTMB video from Mont Blanc, and then that stuck in my head. And I was like, I remember watching this video, and I'm borderline teary-eyed, and I bring my wife, and I was like, look, watch this. Look what these people are doing. And I'm on the edge of being emotional, and she looks at me, she's like, this looks fun to you? I was like, this looks like the most amazing adventure. I said, we're going to I'm starting to put the things in play to chase this goal. And she's like, all right, well, if you're into it, let's do it. And so I was like, let's go. And so that's, it's been this really cool thing. And I think that, along the way, what I've learned on both journeys is just help propel me forward and add some excitement, and and hopefully I can really apply my positive energy to both.
The last episode I released on this podcast was with the Palettis, the founders of UTMB. So I should have asked them, how many Cheribundi gummies do you need to trade for enough stones to get you into UTMB? So one thing that I enjoyed a lot from the conversation with Ross McKay of Cadence was how he thinks about brand partnerships and how he thinks about community in the space. How does Cheribundi show up in a partnership manner? How do you think about working with other brands or events? I know you've worked with Boulderthon in the past. There have been other brands and whatnot that you've worked with. How do you think about that? And again, the reason I'm asking this is because I think a lot of people listening to this are working at brands, and I'm trying to use this platform as a way to highlight and platform people that I think are doing great things in the space that I want others to model and emulate.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like I see things I like. I want to see more of it. So I want to talk to the people who are doing the thing. And so that people can kind of not copy, but create their own version of that. So how How does Ross and how does Cheribundi think about partnerships?
Yeah. So, for us, early on with races, it was kind of just like it was a trial and it was an education piece. Like, let's go out there. We know that thousands of people are going to come to this event, captive audience. Let's talk to them, right? Let's give them some product. And early on too, it was like, all right, well, how do we show up? What's the conversation need? How do we make an impact? And the way I always kind of approached that showing up was it's a hard yes or it's a fuck no, right? So like, we're either going to come, we're going to do this.
I approach dating like that.
Yeah, or we're not going to do this at all, right? Like, in my mind, it's worse to be like not memorable or low energy at one of these events. Like I'll see some other brands kind of show up and they're not doing anything. They're just sitting down. It's just like, let's have some fun here. Like, people are engaged. And so, those early on partnerships with races for us, a lot of conversations, a lot of great feedback, trying the product. And then too, like, selfishly, I would leave those things so energized because people would give me this great feedback on the brand that you don't always get sitting behind a computer, right? And I think that COVID changed the nature of a lot of CPG sales where we're all just kind of sitting at home, clacking on emails and sending presentations and waiting to hear back. And so, right, some of the ability to have meetings with buyers slowed down. Now I'm like able to build relationships differently. And then from like, we kind of really scaled those races. And so then I started to look at who are the customers in these cities. Right. So we sponsored the Flying Pig one year, or we went there, we expoed there, and I just flooded Cincinnati with different run clubs, and Cheribundi because I wanted to get on Kroger's radar. The next year we did, the Pittsburgh Marathon because Dick's is based out of there. And I wanted to kind of get on their radar, and who knows if I think we're still a little early there. Maybe one day we'll get into Dick's Sporting Goods, but right. Show up to those cities, really activate hard. And then I've kind of just placed different, races and things here. I mean, Boulder is where we're based. I really wanted to get our team as the merger between GoodBelly and Next Foods happened, excited about what it is Cheribundi does in the race world and show up and see how we show up in real life. And that's been really fun. So we have this 3-year partnership with them. And I mean, this race is absolutely beautiful. And selfishly, that was a bit of a bucket list race for me. I had already signed up for the race to run it before I ever even signed a sponsorship deal with them. And then from a content partnership perspective, I was then looking for people that like I was paying attention to and following on social and like their story. And a lot of times, like, right, are you into the product? Are you familiar with Cheribundi? Have you used it in the past? And so with different athletes, like Kayla Jeter and Eric Hinman that we've worked with, very familiar with the product, had used it in the past and or actively using it. And so they could really speak to the product in an authentic way and really given our current size and limited budgets, that was something that I was looking for. Is like, how do we partner with people that have experience with Cheribundi, that have used it through training, that can already speak to the product and talk to their audience in a natural way where it doesn't feel like some weird crummy placement or a product ad or something like that. That's like, hey, just finished a run or finished work. I'm gonna have a Cheribundi. I'm gonna stretch. I'm gonna roll out. I'm gonna get a good night's sleep, eat, and then we'll do this again tomorrow, right? And it's kind of in this whole mix. And so that was really then how I tried to layer on different partnerships that we worked with. And like, hey, are you into this product? Do you like the product? Use the product for a month before we have the next round of conversation, because I want you to be excited about it. Because all right, I think that like you can feel that in the conversation. So that's how I really then approached partnerships with content creators, and the same thing with run clubs as we really built that up. I mean, this year we have over 30 run club partnerships, which has been really fun considering a couple years ago, no, I would just get left on red. And so, part of when I started Rooster Runs, that Instagram, was because I needed a way to like slide into the run club DMs, and be like a real person. And also selfishly, like, when we'd go out to these races, I'd take a photographer people. And I had all these great photos of myself, like running and doing this active stuff. I was like, and not all of it fit into the Cheribundi Instagram. I was like, gosh, the coolest pictures I've ever had taken of myself are sitting in a Dropbox folder, not being used. Let's at least get some of these things out here, and it'll give me credibility to reach out. Hey, this guy's a runner. He at least kind of knows the game a little bit, and then that kind of tail spun from there. And so, I think for us, it was, let's test the water, see how it goes. We'll learn a little bit at each event. Then the next event, how do we show up a little bit better? A little, right? How do we make more of an impact? How do we have a better conversation? How do we, kind of meet the runners where they're at and grow the business? How do you, right? Like setting up different codes that we can use, and sometimes those get used. But I think for us, that was like this really important piece is a little bit of trial and error, but like things that felt authentic and real that allowed, our partners to do what they do great without like, I don't want to give you a script. Like, you're a professional, right? Like even when we work together, like you knew the product, great.
I've
Cook.
known
Let you
tart
cook.
cherry juice since
Yeah.
Lisa McDowell, the Detroit Red Wings dietitian, told me about it in, I don't know, 2012. Like I've been using it since then. So it's really easy to say, like, the stuff is legit. I use it every day. I still use it every day.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's about finding the real authentic partnerships versus like, oh, this is a paycheck and I'm just going to tell people and then it's on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So Cheribundi has focused quite a lot on the in-person partnerships, whether it's run clubs and events. How do you think about like influencers, athletes, and the use of social? How does that play into it?
Yeah. So, I mean, a few years ago, we were really tied in with some professional athletes. We had 4 athlete investors. It was a great kind of springboard into working with professional athletes. A lot of great lessons in there as we learned, that piece. And then so like, I think that as we continue to look for different like athlete partnerships where we move into this, I think it's really important for us to work with like good storytellers, right? I think, and one of the fun things about like the endurance world, runners, cyclists, the athletes inside this space is that like, right, your professional athletes, they make a lot of money being professional athletes, right? And like, that's their job. Whereas like sometimes then the content piece, the social piece of that is like almost like a headache, especially, as a brand our size, we're up and coming, right? Like we don't have like Gatorade or Nike money. And so, it's like, okay, whereas some of the other sports, like storytelling is part of how they make money and their sponsorship deals. And so the creativity there is really good. And so like, right, a lot of then, that then drives our social from like a user generated perspective. We had a lot of like our run clubs were great at this. And I think one of the fun things too about working with run clubs is that like, there's always a great photographer. Right, like the photographers to show up as just like friends of the clubs are always
they're quite cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then after practice, then you get your Dropbox link. And you're like, I thought like this is incredible, right? Like you just get like this amazing talent, especially in New York and LA. But then like Portland, Austin, like every city has like these big, massive run clubs now, like that like are really good at social and pump out great content. And so like, right, as part of these partnerships, like that's been something that is just like happen naturally. And I think that like as we've had these authentic relationships, and especially the ones where we show up and we run with them and we hang out, like, right, like you just kind of vibe, and then you have like these great, amazing like action shots and product, and like right where Cheribundi shows up as kind of part of the entire community in an authentic way, and that's been super fun. And so we've just we continue to test things out and iterate and figure it out, because right, like I mean, like anything, I think a lot of us are just like making things up as we go, right? Like there are foundational elements from a sales and marketing perspective, but at the core, right, it's like, all right, let's keep moving forward. Let's try some different things out. We'll learn along the way. Some of this isn't going to work. Pickleball is one of those ones that always came up in conversations. Like pickleball is the fastest growing sport. Okay, I'll go to some pickleball events. And while being like fun, I mean, it was just like, and I think personally for us, running just was more of a fit, and like there are better events for us to show up to, whereas pickleball will also last all day, but it's a couple hundred people versus thousands of people, and people are kind of like you just didn't have the time to interact. So like there are these different things that we've tested out that were like worked and some didn't, but we learned along the way, and we keep then going and testing out different stuff here.
Is pickleball, I've wanted to talk about pickleball on this podcast, is pickleball interesting because of the growth and the numbers of participants, or is it interesting because of who is participating?
I think part of it is probably the growth, right? And it feels like anybody can do it. And there's definitely some hotbeds, right? Like Florida and Texas, Southern California, These warmer areas, I think are definitely a big part of it. It's a super accessible sport. I mean, within a stone's throw of my house, there is 6 outdoor pickleball courts and a big indoor pickleball.
Right, but are those people not also doing other things that are more categorical, endemic, historical, endemic things, right? Like I've sat in on a bunch of brand marketers talk about pickleball and be obsessed with pickleball, and maybe it's because I haven't played it. Maybe I'm just like, this feels like we're chasing something when these people are all doing all sorts of other things, and the opportunity seems to be for like paddle companies and glasses and the things that are endemic to pickleball. I don't think that there's anything again, I haven't played it, so like here's an outsider giving perspective on something I don't know anything about, but like again, based on the principles, like it's the same reason why Adobe or Audi or United Airlines would care about running, right? It's not because you use those products to do the act of running. It's because the people that are using those products and services are the perfect demographic and the exact customer of who is using, maybe not Adobe, but Audi, United, or Hertz or something like that. Right? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, very much. So like, yeah. So I think like for us, it was just one of these things that like
you have to test it.
Yeah, I had to test it, but field marketing is already hard enough to explain against the bottom line, right? And this one was a little bit harder. Especially for these multi-day tournaments in different cities, like the cost of like for us to even activate there was pretty high for what then was like, and I don't want to be like, right? Like, is anybody paying attention to the nutrition pieces of things, right? Like
that's
fueling is hugely important, like in running to get through it, to recover afterwards. Whereas like, I guess I didn't pick up on some of those things at those events that I was at where like that didn't feel to me like the key, right? It was more.
By the way, if you're listening and you're marketing into pickleball and it's going well, I want to hear from you.
yeah. What's the secret? I haven't cracked
it. Just because I'm like curious about like going into these different communities. Like I've worked with a bunch of brands and even like in my time at Insight Tracker, we had conversations about should we care about pickleball, and should we care sounds crude, but like when making decisions, that's what you're deciding.
Yeah. I mean, right. It's popping up everywhere. Like it's extremely fast growing. I always thought it was like interesting. It was like the injuries in pickleball are through the roof.
Right.
But I also have never seen a person stretch.
Right.
Before pickleball, just jump right into it. But in all fairness, I rarely stretch as a runner, right? Like I'll do a couple hip swings and then pull my knee up.
I've been using these bands because my hips don't lie. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting. In my mind, it's still like it's an activity.
Yeah.
Like cornhole or darts. You definitely sweat more. It can get intense, right? Like I've walked off the course gassing, before. But so who knows? At some point as we continue to branch out into other sports, maybe that one enters the picture a little bit more. It seems like it's not going away. More and more people seem to continue to get into it. So
I digress.
Yeah.
I have a couple other things I want to ask you. I want to go back to Cheribundi and the pro and collegiate sports world.
Yeah.
Why isn't that part shared much? Like, why did you not go way further into pro and collegiate sports? It's with 100% penetration and market to youth athletes and this and that versus focusing on running.
Yeah. I mean, so our sports team is pretty small team, but like have built it from the ground up over the last almost 10 years. And so they've done, like Dan and Todd have done an incredible job of building this up and stacking it, right? And I think that what's cool in sports is that more and more teams continue to add dietitians, right? Like the days of how
I met them at the CPSDA last year in Kansas City.
The days of how like Dennis Rodman and John Daly used to like excel at sports have changed, right? Like and then Brady plays into his 40s because he's very particular about what he eats and how he takes care of his body and how much water he's drinking, right? All these things play in. All right, how do I extend this? And so then, right, you have these teams are like, I'm paying all this money to these athletes. How do I protect my investment? We've got to make sure we're fueling them right and getting them recovered. And so, right, dietitians continue to grow, and more teams add these dietitians, and it's a pretty small network. I mean, you've worked in it where, right, then they bounce around between teams, which is then right, you're like, gosh, that's a pretty cool career. Like you guys just bounce around between these like professional teams. And then as that happened, right, like more and more teams add the dietitians, those dietitians change and go to different places. They would then take Cheribundi with them. So it just really kind of kept growing. And so we've looked into, high school football in Texas and youth sports and those things as well. I mean, all of the teams buy Cheribundi. So we don't have sponsorship deals or endorsement deals with any team. And so all the teams are buying the product. And so, then we start looking at something like the high school sports and youth sports, right? Like they don't necessarily have the budget for that. And we've dabbled and we've looked at it, right? Because there is this huge market to do this. And so I think that, for us, that's definitely something that we will continue to like look into and do some more of. We partnered with the local Greenwich YMCA in Greenwich, Connecticut, where we've got a Cheribundi scoreboard, do a lot with their swim team.
Great place for that.
Yeah, they're locally. And so I think selfishly as a guy right on the cusp of turning 40, it's like young kids don't get sore. We need this here in our 30s and 40s. And so, right, like it's like and kind of just given the at the current moment, like where our focus is, like, let's get this in the hands of like the adults and the parents and your everyday athlete. And then hopefully this continues to like permeate down, to the youth sports. And especially as more and more parents are paying attention to like, what am I giving my kids? How am I fueling my own kids? So they continue to like perform at the highest level. So we're seeing that. And it's been on our radar a couple years ago as I was building out like the run club / youth sports thing initially. Like I went down this rabbit hole of like these youth sports mega complexes, and I don't have kids. I don't plan to have kids. And so, but my siblings all have kids, very like competitive athletes, right? I see how much my siblings are spending on summer baseball and swimming, and cross country. And you're like, God, sheesh, was I that expensive back in the day? Right. And so, and then it's like these mega complexes with hundreds of fields. It's wild. So, I think that there's definitely some area for us to look at this, eventually. It's just, it's a pretty small team. So we're building into it.
It's an interesting perspective. And the reason I asked the question is because my experience in selling into pro and collegiate sports is similar in that, like, it's not crazy to think that because a pro athlete uses it, fans will use it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're looking at health and wellness and fitness related products, the customer that learns about something from a pro athlete, it's often other pro athletes. And that's a really expensive way to market to other pro athletes. And so like my decade at Inside Tracker, I sold to probably 40 professional teams and maybe a dozen collegiate teams. And we had some press in Sports Illustrated, Men's Journal, and ESPN, and it was like almost meaningless traffic with the exception of other professional athletes buying.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's like a really challenging way to get incremental sales if you're only marketing, if all people are buying are only other professional athletes. And so, whereas I think we're getting closer to mainstream America caring about health,
mm-hmm.
I hope
so.
And I hope at some point that professional athletes will be that mouthpiece for health. But still at this point, it's like beer and cars and stuff that's not really health and wellness focused. Again, I hope that changes soon. I think it'll change soon, but still months to years away from something like that. So I was just curious if similar experience.
The media spend on all that is pretty pricey, right? And so like you have to have some deep pockets, which is always a challenge as an emerging brand. And I think that's where culture and community is really, critical for us, because I can't,
spend millions
yet. There's always plans to. It's always fun what my board looks like during annual planning time and the first iteration of like budgeting looks like. There's always a million big ideas. Like let's throw a bunch of big ideas out here and see how many of these kind of get through for next year. And so, but yeah, it's that's a wild game for sure.
Top of the list, you got to have like Harvard and Alabama because of the color of the red.
Yeah. Well, the what's funny is like Cheribundi, the process for juicing was done at Cornell.
Huh. Oh yeah, Big Red.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
cool. Ross, what's firing you up in the running world right now?
Yeah, so I'm in week 2 of my training block for Kodiak 100. So I've got that in October. So that's my next big one personally. And so then, along the way, there's going to be fun little, like I've got a warm-up 50K in Connecticut, which is a wild new thing I've discovered with ultras, where like you add other races training, along the training to mix things up. So ultra and trail is the big avenue for me as I chase the UTMB Mont Blanc vision and goal and what that's like. And so, right, I think my head still hasn't quite comprehended what that really means. I got a taste of it during the Desert Rats 100K and rim to rim to rim at the Grand Canyon. But I've liked what I've learned about myself during these things. So I want to keep testing the limits, trying to go a little bit further, figuring out, for me, this whole new game of like nutrition is such a huge new factor in ultramarathoning. How do I continue to fuel after 6 to 8 hours of exercise? They don't ever really exercise, right? Like
it's got to start taking protein in at some point.
Yeah. So like that's been this whole new wild game that's opened up. Like I have 3 bags from the feed that I brought out here this week that include like some scratch bars, some scratch chews. I got like my Create creatine gummies, my Pillar triple magnesium. I've got my Cheribundi gummies for the trip out here. I've got some BPN Go gels. It's like, I don't know what I thought I was going to like work out and do this week out here, but I'm prepared for, right? So it's like all these different things. I've got like my electrolytes while I'm out here. And so it's really funny, like, right, like how critical the nutrition pieces have become in this next journey. So that's what I'm starting to kind of work for. And then what I love about the ultra training is also mixing a lot more strength training in there. So my wife and I have started doing doubles HYROX together. And then really what that means from a professional standpoint too, right? Like the time commitment for this is pretty extensive. So then like my focus, my daily scheduling and planning what's in and what's out has really changed. Like the intention and the purpose around my days, my weekends, getting to these goals, things that I sometimes now have to say no to. How my circle of friends is like shifted in, it's like
you can't afford going out for tons of drinks on a Friday night.
No. And this year I haven't had any alcohol since the end of December. I was at the Founders Only event with Eric Hinman in the fall, and there was a bunch of the guys that had like kind of fizzled out alcohol and had been something that had been like growing in my mind. I was like, what, let's get through a training block. And I just felt so much better. My sleep scores went up. My recovery time improved. And I've just kind of kept that going. And so it's been really cool as like this, I can build around these things and then also get a little bit better at time blocking and prioritizing as I chase these big goals of growing Cheribundi and GoodBelly into household names and big brands that are well recognized. And then at the same time, building this really like purposeful life for myself where I can accomplish these adventures and go do hard things and feel proud about the months and months and months of work that go into these events, because I think that then also mirrors business. Like there is no easy button. There's no simple solution, right? It is brick by brick. It is showing up every day. It is stacking small wins on top of each other. And eventually that'll open the door to some pretty big wins. But along the way, we will have amassed enough run stores, a very sizable business at the feed, more specialty sports retail. Our Amazon business continues to grow. That opens up more regular grocery distribution, all these kind of things. But it starts with showing up every day, very intentional. How are we going to do this? How are we going to tackle this? That passion behind it. And then when I feel stuck, let's go for a run and work through this in my head, or scream about these areas in my head and work through these problems, and or just free up my mind just to like settle. And I think that's been like super powerful. And so that's what I'm really excited about in this back half of the year. I had my biggest first half of events ever I did a New York City perimeter run, Desert Rats 100K, 2 HYROXes, rim to rim to rim. And so super excited now what's playing with this back half, with just seeing some beautiful places and meeting some great people and seeing what we can kind of do along the way.
I love it. I am so glad that of the 2 cameras that died, we kept yours going strong.
Oh, fantastic!
And we caught that last that last minute there in particular. This has been a blast. I am glad we were able to do this in person. Sure. And I'm stoked to follow along with the rest of your adventures this year and watch Cheribundi continue to soar. Yeah,
we'll be back out here. We're going to have a hell of a time at Boulderthon here in a few months. So we're cooking up some really fun ideas for that. And so really excited.
Yes. Boulderthon is a sponsor for the long run. It is a podcast is a race I'm also on the board of. So I have a code. If anyone is listening to this and they're wanting to get involved, sign up. Come meet us out there. FTLR 20 saves you $20.
It is beautiful. You will not be disappointed. It is such a cool race. Logistically, it is so easy to show up in the morning, and then the
killer sunrise.
Yeah, the sights and the scenery and the energy is friggin' awesome. I loved it last year, and so I felt like I had just come off of an ultra. I had to jump right back into marathon training, and so there was a moment in there. I was like, "Fuck running, this sucks." And then I was like, and then I settled back in and had just the best time at that race, and I'm so pumped we're back out here for it this year and doing some cool things. So more to come on that.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Long Run Labs. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's building something of their own. We'll be back next Tuesday with more stories at the intersection of endurance and entrepreneurship from the people shaping the outdoor industry in ways big and small. Until then, keep showing up, keep asking questions, and we'll see you out there. This show is produced by Dylan Delaney of Delaney Video LLC, with musical composition by Brian Walters of Single Track Sound, and managed overall by Emily Holland of Wild Poppy Creative.